Namaste everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to all of you. This morning, I'm going to be talking about a Buddhist teaching, and it's from one of the sutras, and it is known as the arrow. Now, the teaching says that if an arrow hits you, you will feel pain in that part of your body where arrow hit. And then if a second arrow comes and strikes exactly at the same spot, the pain will not only be double, it will become at least 10 times more intense. The unwelcome things that sometimes happen in our life, like, being rejected, losing a valuable object, failing a test, getting injured in an accident, loss of a loved one, loss of money. It could be anything, or being diagnosed with a chronic condition in the body. They are all analogous to the first arrow. They cause pain. They cause enormous pain. The loss of a loved one is enormously painful. Now, the second arrow is fired by our own selves. It is our reaction, our storyline, our anxiety to whatever has happened, and all these things magnify our misery. Many times the terrible things that we are imagining, that we are ruminating upon, hasn't even happened. We may worry, for example, just by doing a Google search that we have cancer because we are showing all the symptoms and that we are going to die soon. We don't know. And our fear of the unknown makes the pain grow even bigger. Sometimes our tendency to excessively look backwards, especially painful memories. All the past pains, past hurts, to think of them. Painful, sad, depressive, difficult past. Or our tendency to focus on terrible things, on unwholesome ideas and thoughts. They can make us very miserable. Being stuck in a feedback loop, overthinking, a restlessness in mind and body, a state of mind where one is very agitated, fearful, worrying about the future, or traveling into the past and rejecting, judging an event that happened in our past, and then perhaps feeling hopeless or helpless, sad, depressed, guilty, whatever. This is the second arrow. When we constantly ruminate on our misery, our difficulties, our pain, our regrets and sorrows, when we chew on them, bring them back up and eat them again and again, we are constantly feeding our misery, our suffering, while we are walking, working, eating, or talking. We are not living our lives, right? To give some more examples of the second arrow. Now, the second arrow sometimes may take the form of judgment. Something like, how could I have been so stupid? The tendency to mentally criticize ourselves or others. Or it could be the tendency to be verbally critical of ourselves and others. They did this to me. And then holding on to that grudge, that animosity, that ill will, that resentment, that bitterness. Or it could take the form of fear. What if the pain doesn't go away? Or grief. Grief at perhaps the limitations of our body, or just feeling sad or hopeless at some unfulfilled dreams or aspirations, or unfulfilled expectations. Or it could take the form of anger. I hate that I am in pain. I don't deserve that. Or I hate that person who did that to me. It could be a feeling of victimhood. Why me? Or just feeling a sense of unworthiness. Sometimes just this thinking like good things only happen to everyone else except me. I'm so unlucky. Or the second arrow could also be that when one can spend days worrying that someone doesn't like us, or that we didn't say or do the right thing, or that we won't get whatever we desire, whatever we want. So, that we can quickly conjure up a hell realm of negativity in our minds that multiplies the stress of the actual event by 10 times or even more. I mean, the actual event is painful enough. Part of the art of suffering well is learning not to magnify our pain by getting carried away in worry, anxiety, guilt, fear, anger, judgment, ill will, despair. So the teaching is we build and maintain our energy reserves to handle the big sufferings. There's already that big suffering, the little sufferings, the little miseries, the second arrows that we shoot ourselves, we can let go. For example, if someone loses their job, of course, it's a normal response to feel fear and anxiety. It is true that in most cases, to be out of work is painful. It's a suffering. And there is real danger attached if one doesn't have enough to eat or can't afford necessary medicine. But one doesn't need to make that misery, that pain, that suffering worse by spinning stories in their head that are much worse than the reality. Some people in this situation may think I'm no good at this or that, or I'll never get another job, or I failed my family. So the teaching says that it's so important to remember that everything is impermanent. A suffering can arise or can work itself out in our lives in the form of a health crisis, a relationship crisis, a financial crisis, for anyone at any moment. So if we know how to handle the little sufferings, we don't have to suffer on a daily basis. We can practice letting go of all the little miseries, the second arrow, and save our energy to embrace and soothe the true pain of illness and loss that are unavoidable. So instead of throwing good energy away on condemning ourselves or obsessing over what catastrophe might be lurking around the corner, which is really shooting ourselves a second arrow, we can simply be present with the real suffering that is right in front of us, with what is happening right now. It is what it is. And that's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is recognizing what is there in the present moment. Suffering is there, yes. Pain is there, difficulty is there, yes. But what is also there is that we are still alive. Breathing in. I know I'm alive. Our eyes still work. Breathing in. I'm aware of my eyes. Breathing out. I smile to my eyes. To have eyes in good condition is a wonderful thing. Because we have eyes in good condition, there's a paradise of shapes and colors available to us at every moment. There are those among us who've gone blind. They've lost that endlessly changing kaleidoscope of shapes and colors. We only need to open our eyes to be in touch with that kaleidoscope. It's a paradise if we only stopped to notice and appreciate it. So if you have eyes in good condition, just open them and enjoy what you see. Happiness is possible immediately. Even if not everything is perfect, no matter what the situation, the circumstances that you're going through. Also, when you look at the person you love, and if he or she is absorbed in anxiety, you can help that person to get out. Darling, do you see the sunset? Do you see the spring coming? This is mindfulness. Mindfulness is for making us aware of what is happening now. Not only are there always conditions of happiness present in me, but they're also all around me. Now, part of the teaching is also about complexes and the sense of a separate self. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. Most of the second arrows with which we shoot ourselves come from our beliefs. And one fundamental problem that causes us to be miserable, to suffer, is the idea that we are a separate self. And it is this idea of a separate self which gives rise to the complexes of inferiority, superiority, and equality. Yes, even equality. As long as we have the idea of a self, we try to protect this separate self, this self, by running away from all kinds of discomforts, all kinds of threats that our mind perceives. So if there is some loneliness, some pain, some sorrow, some fear, we don't like it. And we try to pretend that the misery, that the suffering is not there. Most often, I've seen people around me say, it's nothing. Just nervously trying to sweep all the feelings under the rug. We create unnecessary pain when our reaction to an unpleasant event is to compare ourselves with other selves, reinforcing our illusion of separateness. We may feel a fleeting satisfaction when we tell ourselves, I'm better than he or she is. I don't care what he or she says. And that's the complex of superiority. And we all have it, don't we? Or we may try to immunize ourselves from disappointment by thinking, I'll never be as good as she is. There's no point in trying. That is the complex of inferiority. And most often people think that the best way to deal with these complexes is to maintain the belief, I am their equal. But that too, according to this teaching, is a complex invented by the comparing mind. But of course, equality, when it refers to opportunity and access to resources, in other words, treating everyone's needs and feelings with respect, is wonderful. But the constant effort to prove oneself equal to all others brings only short-lived relief from the pain of discrimination or injustice, and ultimately creates more misery, more suffering, more anger, more bitterness. You know why? Because it perpetuates our incorrect belief in a separate self. If we think, I claim the right to be as good as he is or as good as she is, there is still the idea of a separate self, and therefore there will always be comparison. And the teaching says, as long as we continue to compare, we suffer. We are miserable. We suffer from the fear of coming up short. And even worse, we keep ourselves trapped in a constant, painful delusion of isolation and alienation. Now, I'm going to share with you a story about the Buddha meeting Mara. And the title of the story is called The Greener Grass. And for those who don't know, Mara illustrates the problem. This story basically illustrates the problem with complexes. And in Buddhist stories, Mara is the personification of all delusion, all depravity, everything that makes us miserable in life. So this is how the story goes. The Buddha was taking a solo retreat in a cave, and his attendant and student, Ananda, would go out begging for alms, and upon returning, he would divide his offerings into two, one part for him and one for the Buddha. So one morning, as the Buddha was sitting inside the cave in meditation, Ananda, sitting outside of the cave, saw someone approaching. And Ananda had an inkling that this was someone very familiar. It was Mara. And he really wanted to hide somewhere so that Mara, not seeing anyone, would not approach the cave and disturb the Buddha. But it was too late. Mara walked up to Ananda and asked him, is your teacher here? And again, Ananda wanted to lie and say that no, Buddha is not here. He went to some kind of meeting, conference, But then lying is not appropriate for a monk. So he said, okay, why do you ask? So Mara said that I want to visit the Buddha. And Ananda responded very scornfully. He said, go away. You're not a friend of the Buddha. You are his enemy. Don't you remember how you tried to discourage the Buddha from awakening under the Bodhi tree? And the Buddha defeated you terribly. The Buddha is not going to see you. So when Mara hears this, he laughed and he said, really, your Buddha has enemies? I thought he said he doesn't have any enemies. So Ananda was really dumbstruck. So obviously he went into the cave to ask the Buddha, hoping that the Buddha would refuse. But the Buddha said, oh, let Mara in. So when Mara enters the cave, the Buddha stands up, welcomes Mara as if, he were an old friend, invites him to sit down in a distinguished place, and also asks Ananda to bring tea and water for Mara to drink. Now again, Ananda was very unhappy. He would be happy to get tea for Buddha 200 times a day. But to bring tea for Mara, he didn't want to do that at all. But obviously, he went and got tea for Mara, hoping that this meeting would end soon. It would be a short conversation. But the conversation also ended up being very long. And Buddha and Mara spoke as if they were the best of friends. So I'm going to read out the translation of this conversation to you. Just give me a moment. So Buddha asks Mara, how has it been for you? How are you doing? So Mara says, not very well. My disciples aren't listening to me anymore. They used to do everything I told them to, but nowadays they want to rebel. All my generals, all my soldiers, all my disciples, they want to practice mindfulness. They want to practice walking meditation. They want to practice eating in silence. They want to protect the earth. I don't know who got to them. I'm just so tired of being Mara. I want to be someone else. Buddha, don't think that being Mara is all wild parties, fun, and games. So, as the story goes, the Buddha laughed and responds to Mara. You think being a Buddha is such a lark? Do you know what people Do you know that people say things that I have never said? And then they say it is I who said that? They do things that I have never done or encouraged them to do, but they say that I encourage them to do those things. I let go of my exalted reputation, my princely position, and an endless availability of sensual pleasures. I abandoned my throne, my beautiful wife and baby, future children, wealth, all so that I could realize liberation. But now people come to the temple to pray and plead with me to give them all the very things I have renounced. They don't ask for peace or joy or grace. They just ask for lots of money, power, or for their children to have good grades on their exams. They build a big house and they say it's my house. But it's only a place where people come to pass by and offer food, bananas, sweet rice, and money so that they can have more money to spend on themselves. They make statues of me and they stick all their money on my body. When they celebrate my birthday, they put my statue on top of a car and they drive mindlessly through the city while my body rocks from side to side. I didn't ever want to be riding on a car. So don't think that being Buddha is lucky. Do you want to exchange places? Now Ananda was terrified that Mara would agree, but luckily Mara didn't. Then the Buddha said, Mara, you do your job. Do your job the best you can. Nothing is easy all the time. I know being Mara is very difficult, but being a Buddha has its difficulties too. Each one of us has to play our part wholeheartedly. Each one of us has to play our part wholeheartedly. So, just a final thought. Every life has its trials and tribulations. We can navigate them more skillfully when we don't waste time and energy shooting ourselves with a second arrow, such as dwelling on how much greener the grass in our neighbor's yard looks compared to ourselves. So let's do our practice for today, which is the practice of mindfulness of thoughts, mindfulness of thinking. As the Buddha said, it all begins with our thoughts. So you may like to find a stable position for your body. You may gently close your eyes and bring your attention gently back to your breathing. Breathing in I become aware of my in-breath. Breathing out, I become aware of my out-breath. In-breath, out-breath. In, out. Breathing in, I become aware of my body. In whatever position I may be, whether sitting or lying down, I just become aware of it. Breathing out, I relax my body and release any tension in my body. In, aware of my body. Out, relaxing my whole body. Aware, relax. Breathing in, I feel joy to be alive, like a spring within a mountain whose clear, pure water flows out and down all sides of that mountain and bubbles up, even in places where water has not previously entered, saturating the entire mountain. In the same way, I allow joy, born from the awareness of the breath, to permeate the whole of my body, present everywhere. Breathing out, I smile to life, to all the wonders of life within me and around me. In, feeling joy to be alive. Out, smiling. As you breathe in, feeling the joy to be alive. As you breathe out, smiling to life within you and all around you. Continue to smile. Remember, smile stands for start my internal love engine. Just the joy and gratitude of being alive. And smiling to life. Within you and around you. Breathing in, I become aware of my thinking, of whatever thoughts are passing through, coming and going. I'm just aware of them as they are. Breathing out, I smile to my thoughts. They pass like the clouds. Even if I try, I cannot grab onto them. In, aware of my thoughts. Out, smiling to my thoughts. Breathing in, I notice how paying attention to certain thoughts may give rise to emotions and certain feelings. Like water and sunlight sprouting a seed. Breathing out, I let go of my thinking. I allow my mind to be free, not letting my attention dwell on any particular thought. In, aware of thoughts. Out, letting thoughts go. Breathing in, I touch immense space inside. Thoughts come and go freely, like birds in the sky, with no hindrances. I can shine the lamp of mindfulness clearly in every direction. I'm not controlled by my thinking. Breathing out, I feel free. I smile a smile of freedom. In, immense space. Out, smiling and free. In, immense space, like the blue, clear sky, vast, limitless. Out, smiling a smile of freedom. Dwelling happily in the present moment, I breathe in, enjoying fully this very moment. I breathe out. Present moment. Wonderful moment. In present moment. Out. Wonderful moment. Enjoying the stability. I breathe in and out. Present moment. Wonderful moment. Stable posture. Enjoying. My warmest wish for you is, may you be well. May you be safe and free from all harm. May you be peaceful, light, and happy in body and spirit. May your heart be filled with loving kindness. May you let go and learn to be free. May you live with more freedom and love. whenever you're ready, you may very slowly, very gently open your beautiful eyes